May I welcome all of you in this webinar. First, I want to thank the Vice Chancellor of the Sokoine University is trying to join us, and thank you very much, Sokoine University, for providing a forum around which WIOSAP and the Nairobi Convention were able to develop this. I also do want to thank the experts that have been involved in the process of developing guidelines. We do not want to take it for granted that these guidelines were developed by experts from the region. Most of them provided valuable time, pro bono valuable time to develop the guidelines. We do have very many other experts who reviewed the document, including the participation of focal points in the Nairobi Convention. And I do want to thank all the focal points participating today, because we also do hope that it's the focal points that will be the influence of the use of the guidelines. At some point, the guidelines must be used to influence policy and river management, river basin management in each of the countries. So I also would like to welcome all the participants that in this webinar. We have about 100. I mean, less than 90, about 100 minutes. So welcome you to these discussions. Just a very brief intro. The Nairobi Convention, a convention for 10 countries within the Western Indian Ocean, did implement projects between 2009 and 2013. That project was labeled Project Addressing Land-Based Sources of Pollution, and the project looked at the magnitude of land-based activities and the pollution loads and impacts on critical habitats. The project also did review the way the river basins were being managed across the region, including the estuaries and the nearshore waters. And it was evident from all the countries that are signatory to the Nairobi Convention that there are quite a number of important rivers that drain to the Western Indian Ocean and consequently contribute to the healthy ocean systems in the region. And most of these rivers are also shared by one or more, by two or more countries. Despite that, in many countries, it was evident that poor farming practices, including damming of rivers, or just general poor management of river basins, had resulted in changes in the river flows, the generation of water quality and quantity, impacted on the sediment flows, the flow of sediments, either by damming or too much sediments, either by poor agricultural practices, and consequently damage critical habitats, e.g. coral reefs, and therefore reducing ecosystem productivity and ecosystem services that we've become used as services that rivers provide. So the objectives of the guidelines is to reset or to break the cycle, or to introduce better management of river basins, or to catalyze at least the use of a tool that is well understood globally. It's also to try and raise awareness on flows as a tool. One of the things that the WIOSAP project brought up very clearly was that environmental flows as a tool was very rarely used in all the countries that are signatory to the Nairobi Convention. So the development of the tool of e-flow as a tool and subsequent generation of awareness of the existence of the tool is part of what we are doing, here today. But we do hope we shall go beyond that, and in the use of the guidelines, probably also try and harmonize the methodologies for a coherent application of the tool across the region. We do hope that going forward we shall hold capacity building exercises, bring stakeholders together, bring practitioners together in a means of increasing the use of the tool that's being initiated here today. We shall also try and make sure that we get or initiate policy discussions, because a tool that is not anchored in policy might not be very useful in the region. So we shall try and initiate policy discussions to make sure that the tool is used widely across the region. We shall also try and make sure that the tool is not just for river basins, but we may want to use the tool where there is the river ocean linkages. So I'll want to stop there, and if possible, if the professor has joined us, I'll want to give him a chance to make the statement. If not, may I also ask the chair of the Nairobi Convention, under which we all operate, the chair of the Nairobi Convention, the chair of the Bureau of the Nairobi Convention, that provides guidance to operations of the Nairobi Convention. If you have opening remarks, you may go ahead, but may I confirm whether we've had Professor, the Vice Chancellor?
The Vice Chancellor is restarting his computer, so he should join us in a few from now.
Okay. So in that situation, may I request the chair of the convention to make a few observations?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dixon, and good evening, colleagues. Kenya, again, we are once again proud to be the chair of Nairobi Convention, and for the opportunity given to us by the Secretariat and other parties to the convention, not just to participate in this event, but also to launch this important document on guidelines on environmental flow assessment. And just to take us back to a bit of the origin of the environmental flow concept, I think you're all aware that from the turn of the century through the 60s, water management in many countries mainly focused on maximizing flood protection, water supplies, and hydro power generation. And in the decades of the 70s, the ecological and economic effects of these projects prompted scientists to seek ways to modify, for example, dam operations to maintain, at that time, certain fish species. Then the initial focus during that time was on determining what was called a minimum flow necessary to preserve individual species. And then the environmental flows evolved from this concept of minimum flows and later to in-stream flows, which emphasized the need to keep waterways within the waterways. And as we progressed and as we developed in the 90s, it also came to the realization of most scientists that biological and social systems supported rivers are too complicated to be summarized by a single minimum flow requirement. And therefore, this was the beginning of the birth of a comprehensive terminology, which we now call environmental flow. And with the word environmental flow, then we're expected to look at the impact of environmental flows beyond single species to both human and biological ecosystem that exist in the downstream reaches of any river. And we are very happy that under the Nairobi Convention, under the Western Indian Ocean Strategic Action Program of WIOSAP, that 6 priority river basins were identified where environmental flow could be applied, noting that this has been a concern in the region as a whole. And for us in Kenya, 2 rivers have been identified. That is the Tana River Basin and the Athi River Basin, all of which are located in Kenya. But just to share with you, as an example, the Tana River Basin covers 126,026 kilometers square, which is approximately 21% of the land area in Kenya. And most interestingly, that the source of this river is from the high potential areas, from the Mount Kenya area and what we call the Aberdare area, where most of our water resources that are even serving Nairobi originate from. However, 80% of this river runs through arid and semi-arid areas in its mid reaches and its lower reaches, from where it enters the Indian Ocean as the Tana Delta, another rich area which is rich with mangrove ecosystems. And in the upper reaches, the water demand is very high because we have a lot of economic activities that rely on irrigation and also the hydroelectric power dams. Actually, there are 5 major dams that supply this country with electricity of about 600 megawatts in production. And there are 2 other major dams that are proposed below the fifth dam. And with this, and with the knowledge that this river traverses, 80% of it traverses arid and semi-arid areas, we have seen the need for having sustained flows in the most of the lower parts of the river ecosystems. And water availability and also minimum flows and also low environmental flows have been noticed in the upper reaches of this river system. And this has resulted in many areas, particularly in the Mount Kenya region, in water conflicts and also in high sediment load, mainly caused by siltation and degradation, because where this river is emanating from, there's a lot of land degradation in its upper reaches. And we've also noticed inefficient water use, particularly in irrigation, irrigation and other water uses around the Tana Basin area. And therefore, as a result of this, we have identified as a country several challenges that are affecting the water demand both upstream and downstream, and also to ensure that the environmental flows are maintained and to make sure that it reaches the Tana Delta. We still have some challenges in implementing these provisions, some of which are captured in our laws. For example, under the Water Act of 2002, which has been which has been replaced by Water Act of 2016. And this is also acknowledged in our other policy documents, including the Climate Change Act, the need to have equitable resource across the country, and also embedded in our constitution, which emphasizes the need for sustainable land management, as well as the right and access to a clean and healthy environment, and the right to water resources. So amid these challenges, there's often no information on various socioeconomic and environmental demands of our rivers. And I'm just giving an example of Kenya, noting that these similar challenges also affect other countries. I note, therefore, with appreciation that last year, a number of senior water resource managers from the convention countries were trained in the application of these guidelines, including some from Kenya. Given the importance of sustaining lives and the economy on the local and national levels at Kenya and in the region at large, and critically when it comes to water quantity, quality, and timings of our river flows remains very critical. And for this reason, we welcome the new publication on environmental flow assessment from the Nairobi Convention, WIOSAP, and the Sokoine University of Agriculture to help us address some of the challenges the country faces in sustainable management of river flows. We are happy to discuss the guidelines recommendation and analysis with fellow stakeholders and look forward to hearing how the contracting parties will be applying these guidelines in practice. As many of our rivers in the region are transboundary in nature, we need to share lessons learned in water resource management as a region that is guided by common objective, particularly in focusing on the goal of achieving sustainability and proper management of our water resources within the convention contracting party areas. I therefore hope that this will be the first conversation among many, and that my fellow Nairobi Convention states and partners will continue these discussions in due course. And most importantly, we urge the Nairobi Convention Secretariat to come up with a roadmap of implementing these guidelines, and from time to time report on progress made thereof. I thank you all and welcome you to the meeting. And with those few remarks, I declare the guidelines on environmental flow assessment of the Nairobi Convention officially launched. Thank you very much and have a good meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you for your statement. I do hope that we have Professor Rafael Chibunda now.
Yes, Dixon, Professor Davis is in now. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So while he's settling, I think let's provide WIOSAP the opportunity to make a few remarks, and then we shall invite the professor.
All right. Thank you, Dixon, and all the participants. Good afternoon. WIOSAP is glad to be part and parcel of this great launch for the guidelines on the e-flow assessments for the Western Indian Ocean region. WIOSAP's role, of course, working closely with the Nairobi Convention and Sokoine University, was to coordinate the review, the technical layout, and the printing of this publication. And we hope that the publication is well received. Despite the importance of e-flows and water resources in the region, WIOSAP's role has been quite limited. I must say that it's one of those areas that WIOSAP is trying to actively build on. And through research grants like the Marine Research Grant and the Marine Science for Management Grant, WIOSAP is currently supporting research that is mainly focused on estuaries and fisheries resources. Now, these are important systems in relation to the subject of e-flows. And these projects that are currently supported look into the socio-ecological aspects of estuaries. The first one focuses on the Tana River, which Dr. Pacifica has spoke about as an important estuary. The Rufiji Delta in Tanzania, which is also a priority area for this e-flow guidelines, and Bonsinais in Mozambique. Now, the first research study that we are supporting looks at the fisheries in these three areas and their sustainable governance and the importance of these estuaries in sustaining these fisheries. Another study also that WIOSAP is currently supporting looks at the ecology of the anguillid eels. These are very rare fish that inhabits the estuarine systems. And it's important to have flows that maintain and allow passage of migratory fish. So this study will offer knowledge and insight into the ecology of this rare species of fish, the anguillid eels, and the ecology as well as the behavioral information. And if you look at all these studies, they also emphasize the importance of the connection between the ocean and the estuaries. So these guidelines come at the right time, because then they'll expand the knowledge on how to conduct even better assessments of these unique environments. So WIOMSA is keen to build more partnerships and opportunities to develop and implement projects focused on water resource management and improving the effective and efficient governance of water resource within the Western Indian Ocean. Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing WIOMSA to make a short remark. Asante.
Thank you, Amsa. And with that, may I now welcome Professor Raphael Chibunda. I hope I've not introduced in any way it shouldn't be. Professor Raphael Chibunda, apologies for probably the late start and the communication breakdown. Feel most welcome. At the onset, we did say we appreciate the support that has been given to the convention, WIOMSA, and all those consultants that have been involved in developing these guidelines. I want to, and we've had remarks from Kenya as the chair of the Bureau of the Nairobi Convention. We've had remarks from WIOMSA. If you don't mind, may I request you to chair the session from here on, as the technical discussions of what is in the guidelines commences. If you don't mind, can I request you to take over from here?
Okay, thank you. Good evening, all participants. Now I'm here just to give opening remarks on behalf of Professor Chibunda, who is away for official works. I'm Professor Sanga from Sokoine University of Agriculture. Dear colleagues and esteemed guests, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this event marking the release of the guidance on the assessment of environmental flows of the Western Indian Ocean. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Nairobi Convention of Contracting Parties and the Secretariat, WIOMSA, and my colleague here at the Sokoine University of Agriculture for their hard work in producing these guidelines. The need to ensure the sustainable management of rivers, both within Western Indian Ocean region and beyond, has only been growing over the past few years. Rivers and their associated ecosystems help sustain life in this region and provide us with a huge range of services. Without them, many communities would be without a source of drinking water, food, or employment. Many of our farmers would be unable to irrigate their crops or feed their animals, and the entire nations would be without a crucial source of electricity. Yet, despite these many services, action is needed to help protect these freshwater ecosystems from increasing demand and pressures. Many harmful activity upstream, such as garbage disposal, livestock grazing near river banks, farming in wetlands, and large-scale water extraction for irrigation, among others, have profound changed the characteristics of these rivers. Community can no longer be sure of when, how much, or even if water will flow from some rivers at all. This has serious impact on livelihood, the environment, and even the national economy. Environmental flows assessment, or E-flows, seeks to determine the quantity, quality of water, and the segment flow necessary to sustain freshwater and the estuary ecosystem and human livelihood and the well-being that depend on them. I'm proud to note that Sokoine University of Agriculture has been heavily involved in promoting, conducting, e-flows assessment in Tanzania and in sharing our experience throughout the region as well. I am pleasantly note that the chair of the WIOSAP Region Task Force on Sustainable Management of River Flows, Professor Jaffael Kashagi, is from SUA, which underscores the need for region shared learning and integration. We strongly believe that e-flows assessment and recommendation can have profound changes on riverside community, the environment, and even the national economies. That is, as a university, why we are very excited to contribute to these guidelines, which for the first time offer a standardized region-wide approach to conducting e-flows assessment. The new step-by-step guide will enable learning across the region and beyond. The Sokoine University of Agriculture is also very pleased to accept the role of custodian of this guidance on behalf of practitioners of river flows management in the Nairobi Convention area. In this role as a guardian and in collaboration with the Nairobi Convention and the other partners, the university will thus be responsible for periodical review, either to account for emerging science and techniques or in response to a request from Nairobi Convention states. We will also help disseminate this guidance throughout the region following such review. We look forward to sharing best practice and lessons on implementation of the guidance with you, and hope this afternoon's discussion is the first of many. I commend the Nairobi Convention Secretariat and the WIOMSA for supporting this production and the Global Environment Facility for its funding throughout the WIOSAP project. It is my utmost pleasure now to declare the guidance on the assessment of environmental flows in the Western Indian Ocean officially launched. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Camila Sanga. Thank you for your input. I think we appreciate that Professor Rafael Chibunda was not there. So nevertheless, thank you so much for the support from Sokoine University and for a brilliant product that you helped to produce. With that, can we quickly now request that we get to the details of what is in the guidelines through the chief experts from the Institute of Water Studies, University of Western Cape. This is Professor Kate Brown. Are you there?
Yes, Dixon, Kate is here.
I am here. Thank you very much, Dixon. William, are you showing my slides or am I going to put them up?
Your slides are up already, Prof.
Yes, I know, but I wanted to show my own slides, so can I put them up?
Please do. Please go ahead. So I'm taking this down. Yes.
Do we have them?
Yes, we do. You can proceed.
All right. Thank you very much, and to everybody who's introduced the guidelines and given us some really interesting insights into what is happening in the Western Indian Ocean region with respect to the concern about the impact of rivers and degradation of rivers on the marine ecosystem. So thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity. I am Kate Brown. I'm one of the authors of the guidelines. The other authors of the guidelines are Professor Jackie King, and there were substantial contributions from Drs. Laura Van and Suzanne Talliard. So that was the team that was the first authorship. But in fact, the guidelines are a product of quite a extensive development process and a lot of stakeholder consultation, starting as far back as 2018 with the Project Steering Committee approval of the project, recruiting the people to write the books, and myself included. And then we went into a process of putting together a draft, which went through extensive regional review in March and April, was validated in May and approved in June last year. We then, as one of the introductory speakers mentioned, went through a training program in Cape Town with a number of you that are on the line now. So hello to those of you who we know well. And we've spent the early part of this year, the latter part of last year, and the early part of this year with editorial design, printing, and here we are with the document ready to go. So I've been tasked with just taking you through what is in the document. And essentially, it is a document that is compiled of 6 chapters with references. And I'll get to why I've highlighted the references in a minute. So if we go through each of those, the introduction, amongst other things, covers the aim of the guidelines, which were to provide guidance on environmental flow assessments for rivers and estuaries, to enable a more harmonized approach across the region, specifically with a view to enhancing the protection of the Western Indian Ocean. And that aim cuts across the guidelines all the way through in terms of many of the things that are covered and in the manner in which they're covered. The guidelines are also in recognition of the importance of environmental flow assessments and decision making in the region.
We lost you, Kate. We've lost you, Kate. Hello. Anybody can send an email, phone message to Kate? Hello, Kate, are you home?
So Dixon, we both lost him, I think all of us, and guessing Jared is trying to get hold of her at the moment.
May I request those who will make presentations to also have open WhatsApp, just in case something like this happens. Okay. We got to improvise now. Anybody? Okay, seems that we can't get her in WhatsApp, and At this point, may I request anybody who has had, anybody with questions, please type them on, as we can also take the time available now to type any question that you may have on the guidelines. We shall try and respond to them, or compile them and respond to them later. But go ahead and type any question that you may have. If we do not get Kate shortly, I'll request that we get the first presentation on the actual use of the guidelines from Rufiji. But let's wait for a while longer and see what. Can we get the Rufiji presentation as we wait for Kate to reconnect?
Yes, Dixon, that will be presented by the focal point of Tanzania. That will be done by Abood on how the guidelines will be used in the country. Yeah.
Abood, are you there?
Present, sir. I'm here.
Yeah, let's go with your presentation as we wait for Kate to reconnect.
Okay, Chair. I do not have a PowerPoint presentation. I have been handed over the remarks for Tanzania.
Okay, am I back now?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that. My apology. Am I still sharing my screen?
Not yet.
No, your screen went down.
All right. My apologies. I was not aware of that. I'm now. How far had I got?
Put the screen back. Put the PowerPoint back. We shall tell you where you are in the PowerPoint.
All right.
No, you are way back. I think you are on number. Yeah, you have just done number 2, I think.
This one.
Number 3. You've done number 3, yes.
Which one? This one or this one?
You were still on the introductory slide, basically.
This one.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
I apologize for that. I was not aware that I had disappeared into the ether, and I wasn't watching my phone as closely as I should have. Thank you, Laura, for phoning me. Should I continue?
Please do.
Now,
a little bit of condensed time, but please continue.
All right. So the guidelines comprise of 6 chapters and a chapter with references. I'll get to the references in a second, but I'm going to just go through each of the chapters to give you a brief understanding of what is there. In chapter 1, the aim of the guidelines is introduced to provide guidance on environmental flow assessments for rivers and estuaries to enable a harmonized approach across the region to enhance the protection of the Western Indian Ocean. This is in recognition of the fact that these environmental flow assessment is a tool for management of river flows, which is underutilized in the Western Indian Ocean area and is particularly underutilized with respect to how rivers might impact on marine ecosystems. The intended users are government agencies, national research institutions, civil societies, universities, and all of those that are involved in the management of water resources. Chapter 2 gives the introduction to environmental flows. It is taken from the Brisbane Declaration with the addition of two things. So it is the quantity, timing, and quality of flow of water, sediment, and biota necessary to sustain freshwater and estuarine ecosystems, and the human livelihoods and well-being that depend on those ecosystems. When we're talking about how rivers impact the marine environment, the addition of sediment and biota to water in terms of flow becomes incredibly important. We've highlighted the fact that these environmental flows are there to sustain the ecosystems that support us, but are essentially comprised of two parts. And the first is those environmental flow assessments that deal with the quantity pattern of flows with sediment and water quality, which is essentially the purview of the technical side of scientists, those people that have been studying those ecosystems and how they function and how they're likely to respond to the changes that are imposed on them by water resource development. But that an incredibly important part of environmental flows is to use the information coming from those assessments to work out how much water and how much protection will be given to rivers and what that means for sustainability, biodiversity, reliable water supply, livelihoods, resilience, and equity. And that is the area of governments and stakeholders. What is true is that environmental flows, if established in a structural way, aim to ensure development does not undermine the ability of ecosystems to function sustainably and enhance their resilience to climate change, which means that they are central to integrated water resource management. There's a tendency for, as we increase the level of water resource development, we increase the changes in water quality and quantity and sediments and migration and blockages to migration. What environmental flows are attempting to do is to change the trajectory of some of those lines through careful intervention, that when we know we're making an intervention that is going to harm an ecosystem, to provide something to mitigate that. In terms of environmental flow assessments, the guideline goes through the basic steps. Those are to assess the health of the river or estuary ecosystems that are targeted for an assessment, to try and establish the implications of the change in flows of water, sediment, and biota for ecosystem services, the downstream implications of these, the implications for sustainability and biodiversity targets, and to provide scenarios highlighting the trade-offs, understanding that there will be trade-offs and that is a societal decision as to what those might be, and to provide that information to the lower part of the of that definition that we showed earlier, where governments and stakeholders make that kind of decision. In terms of environmental flow assessment methods, what we've done is we've looked back to the 1970s when environmental flows started and the sorts of changes that have happened over time in methods, moving from methods with little or no ecology to those that consider the whole ecosystem, from those that don't look at social aspects to those that look at social use and well-being, from those that only consider dry season flows and minimum flows to whole regime, from those that are prescriptive in terms of this is what you must do, to interactive in terms of this is what will happen if you do this, and from single locations to whole basins. So this chapter spends some time going through the different methods: hydrological, hydraulic, habitat rating, holistic, and ecosystem modeling. But it highlights that as we move towards the present day, there has been an increase in these systems that look at whole ecosystems, source to sea, that look at social use and well-being, particularly when we're talking about the impacts on the marine environment, who look at water sediments and biota that are interactive and do look at the whole basin. What we've done is provided some information on that by assessing the environmental flows that have happened since 1990 in the region, in the Western Indian Ocean region. And we can see a move towards more holistic methods, towards using the whole of the basin rather than just individual river reaches, and moving from something that is prescriptive, that tells you what you should do, to something that is scenario-based, that tells you what will happen if you do things. So the guidelines are following trends that are already in place in the region. Chapter 4 takes you through the steps of undertaking an environmental flows assessment. We've tried to cover the main features of any environmental flow assessment: the nature of the assessment, the budget, the method, the role of the environmental flows practitioner, selecting an appropriate method, the skills needed, and all a list of other implications and needs for an environmental flow assessment. We've done this in the way of tables by and large with supporting text, so that there's an idea for different levels of assessment, from a low, medium, and high resolution assessment, how many people you might need, how many days will be needed for data collection, for preparation, for assessment, for write-up, and how much will be needed depending on different aspects that you're looking at. I'm not expecting anybody to go through those tables now. I'm just putting them up by way of example. There's similar tables for what kind of information you can expect from different methods should you apply them. Which of those work for estuaries, which work for rivers, which work for both. In terms of the team, what you can expect, who might you expect the team members to be, what their skill set should be, and what their responsibilities are likely to be in an environmental flow assessment. So that's all in the guidelines for those of you that are interested to go and have a look at that, and for those of you that would like to set up an assessment of your own. Hopefully it is helpful and useful going forward. And then also an idea of what kind of information is going to be needed depending on which of the methods you choose to employ. We haven't been able to cover every method that there is. We've tried to select those that have been most commonly applied in the region. Chapter 4 is looking at maintaining data limitations. It makes the point that environmental flow assessments, particularly those that have been used in the region, have evolved to cope with data constraints. These are fairly site-specific in how you handle them, but there have been many examples of assessments done with data constraints, including things that use relative predictions and ranges of uncertainty, cost-effective means of generating data. There's an example with references to the study of the challenges and solution in environmental flows assessments for non-perennial rivers, which in the region are traditionally those that have the poorest data underpinning them. And then there are some references to help you move through with a very pressing problem in the area of extreme data limitations in some area. The underlying message is you can still do something even with data limitations. Chapter 6 talks to mainstreaming the uptake of environmental flow assessments, deciding on environmental flow allocations, harmonizing policies, building capacity in environmental flows, and building e-flows ecosystems, information systems. It also acknowledges that some of this work is ongoing in the region. One of the examples that is used is the Zambian water information system, which includes information on environmental flows in the latest update that is currently being finalized. It also looks at the key attributes of areas in the region and elsewhere in the world where there has been e-flows implementation, what it took to get there, what are the main challenges, and what are the key attributes. The last chapter of the guidelines is the references. I highlight it as a chapter because what we've tried here is to make sure that there are seminal texts included in there and make sure that the documents are useful to somebody who's looking for further reading. There are about 100 references, and I hope for those of you that use the guideline, you find the selection of references useful to yourselves. That is an introduction to the guidelines, quick, and I'm sorry for missing you for a while, but thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for that summary. May I ask whether there's anybody who has a question that you might want to put up now? You could also go into the chat and type your question. And if there's any question that's so burning, we can take it now. Without which we shall ask Aboud, who must be well prepared now to any immediate reactions from the those who had that brilliant presentation? If none,
Dixon, there are questions. There are questions in the chat which Angela could bring up maybe.
I can't see any hands up. Can I request that Aboud, you go ahead and make your intervention?
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of Tanzania, let me first join my compatriots from the member states and thank the convention and everyone, including experts, who made these very critical guidelines for our upstream systems happen. Chair, we all know that lakes, rivers, deltas are arteries and veins of our ocean domain. We cannot talk of ocean governance or blue economy without addressing these arteries and veins. Chair, the environmental flows guidelines provide us with a unique opportunity to engage, to address, and to check environmental, social concerns that threaten the health of our critical habitats and our own survival. Chair, Tanzania is endowed with a large-scale land-ocean connectivity composed of basins, wetlands, rivers, and rich heritage of flora and fauna. These basins provide us with a larger life support functions for livelihoods, tourism, energy, forestry, biodiversity, and transportation, including water. So these guidelines will very much help us as a country in addressing the national development goals on environment, food security, and sustainability. Chair, the demo project on e-flows will be led by SUA, NAMC, Refugee Basin Water Board, Agriculture, and Tourism Ministries. Chair, allow me to conclude shortly by once again thanking the convention, WIOSAP, JAF, SUA, and all the experts who made these guidelines reality. I thank you all, and I hope that the Mbarali River pilot project in Tanzania on e-flows will be an opening to a greater success toward capacity, communications, dialogue, planning, conservation, and protection. Asante sana.
Thank you, Aboud, for that intervention. May I request for the intervention from Mozambique? Mozambique, please. Do we have Mozambique?
Yes, Dixon, Mozambique is here, and Denise Juiso from Eduardo Mondlane will speak on behalf of the government.
Do we have Mozambique? Please go on.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I think Mr. Alexandre Bartolomeu is there, might be having some challenges with his connection. I'll just briefly, on behalf of our team in Mozambique, say we're very grateful to be part of this regional initiative. In our case, we have planned to test case these guidelines looking into a very particular river system that resembles most of Mozambique's situation, that the downstream country in many rivers. Of the 9 that shares in the region, 8 of them, Mozambique is a downstream country. And you can already imagine the complexity of managing this system. In this case, we've been humanist, and we have a team not only of Mozambican experts, but also international partners that have been cooperating in these studies. So the title of the project will be Environmental Flows for Enhancing Biodiversity and Poverty Alleviation in Economic. And the purpose is to design the environmental flows that will maintain the enhance the biodiversity values and the functioning of the estuarine and that this part of area look being a host or habitat for very valuable a very large number of bird species that
Speak loudly, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit loudly.
So I was saying the system that we're looking at can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Just keep on loudly.
I'll try to scream. So briefly, I wanted to say that this particular ecosystem that we're looking at is very particular in the sense that there are a very large number of bird species that frequent the area from time to time and are linked to many other regions in the world. So basically, we say we very appreciate this initiative by WIOSAP to support our countries to address these critical issues of environmental flows that are very critical also for our oceans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mozambique. And before we go to any questions, may I invite Madagascar? Madagascar, please.
Yes, Dixon. This is Madagascar.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank the Secretariat for organization of this meeting and the experts who contribute to this guideline on e-flows. This guideline is very welcome because Madagascar now we are preparing to implement the project on WIOSAP project on sustainable management of e-flows for West Coast River of Madagascar. A case is we take one river of Beachbrook River. This river is located in the northwest of Madagascar. Of course, the coastal zone. The overall objective is to promote sustainable management of the river basin in the west coast of Madagascar to maintain a healthy for a reduced sediment load to minimize detrimental impact on coastal ecosystem. This project is led by the Directorate General of Environment and Forestry at the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development. As a partner, we have so many partners. We have ministry in charge of water, ministry in charge of agriculture and fisheries, the Ministry of Meteorology. We have the national authorities on water, and there is also the association of water users. So many also the center, national center, fisherman association, and all, of course, the decentralized territorial communities. This is the branch of the ministry from central to regional. The main outcome of our project is to have an improved quality of water and ecosystem condition through e-flows implementation. So for Madagascar, the guideline is very, very, very helpful, and we will use this during the implementation, and I thanks the secretariat, and thanks everyone who have contributed to the guideline. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madagascar. And with that, probably we could open up for a few questions that have been there. I think there was one on. I think Kate should take that one. I think from Bonani, whether you considered the climate change. But the questions are there. If Kate, you want to go through them, or anybody else who has participated in development, you can go. You can respond to them now.
Hi, Dixon. Thank you. I do believe the only one of those, one I've already responded to. Thank you, Ahmed. The 2 and 3 are not questions that I can respond to at the moment. But the 4th one is Bonani's asking if the guidelines take consideration the impact of climate change on flow. And I actually have just sent him an answer on his email saying that certainly the guidelines acknowledge that climate change is going to affect rivers. It also, the guidelines highlight that some of the methods will account for climate change, provided that has come through in the hydrology and in the changes to those flows, because the changes in the climate will affect the flow of water and sediment in particular through the system. So yes, some of the methods do account or can account for climate change or predict the changes that are likely to happen with climate change. And the guidelines do acknowledge that and highlight which of those can. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Anybody else with an intervention that she might want to make contributions to the discussion?
Dixon, this is Angela. We've received a couple of questions much earlier on in the chat that might be for the wider range of experts. We have one from Lara Van Niekerk, who asks, how are the guidelines going to be mainstreamed into the region's policy?
I mean, I think those are the same questions that is in. Those are the questions that are on the screen now, and probably would like to ask: is any of the focal points kept feeling like want to address that? Anybody who wants any focal point might want to address that. I'm sure you do not address the regional policy, but the regional policies are based on national policies. How many countries have utilized e-flows in their river basin management policies? Besides Tanzania, I think they have.
This is Laura speaking. And I would also just like to reiterate, especially asking that question around the marine e-flows. So most of the countries have some sort of a policy around environmental flows, but most of the countries don't have a push for the strong link of coastal e-flows to river e-flows, including South Africa. So I would like to know how we are going to take the guidelines further, given that we really have a truly catchment to coast approach promoted in the guidelines, and how we're mainstreaming it through all the partners. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Can we throw that to Kate? The original idea was to make sure that rivers and coasts are managed together, or institutions that manage river basins and institutions that manage coasts come to the table or discuss together and discuss the whole range of e-flow as a tool, source to sea. So the question can be reframed to Kate: do the current guidelines provide for the management of both marine and freshwater ecosystems?
Gosh, I'm not sure how to answer that. The guidelines are focused on environmental flow assessment. That has implications for the management of the ecosystems, riverine and marine. There is some discussion on those interlinkages and those plays across the two, but they don't. It doesn't answer that particular question in the guidelines in any event. I'm sorry that I can't be more helpful than that.
Okay. At the policy, at the request, on the request of the development of an e-flow tool, it was anticipated that the convention will bring together those dealing with the integrated coastal zone management and those who are dealing with the river-based management. So suffice to say that in the application, in the use of these guidelines, we shall take upon ourselves to make sure that those frameworks responsible for integrated coastal zone management are part of the discussion, and we shall see how best they link, and that might also respond to the question directly on whether at the regional level we can have we can introduce at a regional level we can use the e-flow guidelines or request for e-flow guidelines to be used in each of the countries as a regional push or as a regional policy. So that doesn't answer directly to the question asked, but I hope it helps. Mong has a question. What's the difference between EIA and e-flows? Kate, you want to take that loudly?
Sure, I sent some of that and it's come up on the screen now. It's a very good question. Environmental flows focus particularly on the impacts related to the changes in flow of water sediment biota. Because they are focusing on those aspects, they form an integral part of EIAs, at least they should. They also should form an integral part of cumulative impact assessments, strategic environmental flow assessments, and they have a bigger role to play. And one of the points, and that continuation of that sentence there is that the World Bank e-flows guidelines for hydropower address this aspect specifically of the interplay between the EIA, CIA, and SEA. So that was what I was trying to say there, that the last part of that sentence is missing. But I think in these guidelines, what we are highlighting is that as we move more and more to a point where we're putting extreme pressure on our systems, not just our river systems, not just our oceans, not just our estuaries, but all of them. What environmental flows brings to the table is saying there are methods that allow you to understand these systems and how they're going to react. And as we are putting more and more pressure on them from a management perspective, it becomes extremely important to understand how they're going to react, which is why the methods in the region have been moving to those that are more complicated in terms of ecosystem modeling methods, holistic modeling methods, because there's a lot of questions that can be answered through those kind of methods, and why they are moving more towards the scenario-based. So people start to grapple with the fact that these are living systems, that we are dependent on them, and that what our water resource development will impact them. And the better understanding we have, the more we can mitigate that. We need to do water resource development. So what we're saying is let's enhance our understanding of these systems and how they are all completely connected with each other and how they are all completely connected with us and humanity. I think that's the overriding thing. So to come back to that question about the EIA, yes, and I believe that environmental flow assessment should be part of EIA, but I also believe they should be much, much bigger than that. And I think that this is what the guideline is trying to say. And I think this is what WIOSAP and the Nairobi Convention are trying to say by saying let's, look at the veins and the arteries. It's saying that this is an interconnected system. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. I do not want to add on to that because that's not the area that we are most comfortable in. It's a specialized area. But could I say that the e-flow as a tool is very supportive the EIA, if you have the e-flow tool on a development round or within a river basin, then most likely you're going to have a better informed EIA.
That is absolutely true. Thank you for making that point.
Okay. Now we have a question from Nale Joyt. Any suggestions in the guide? You can read that. Anybody wants to respond to that?
If I may, I would like to, unless it's somebody else that would. Again, an excellent question. I'm afraid my response here is going to be, we don't have time to go in that right now, but there are a lot of moves to do exactly this, to take the information that we've gained from one area and extrapolate those across wider areas, so that instead of with a wide basin-wide or region-wide extrapolation, instead of doing that with the methods that are very limited in the amount of information they provide and the amount of protection they provide, is doing it with methods that provide more information, but using relationships that we know hold for other areas. Thank you very much, and I hope watch the space.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all of you for putting up those, for raising the questions and the answers given by Kate. And thank you for participating. Thank you, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Madagascar, for your input. Keep the questions coming. We shall, if possible, respond to the questions that will come online. Before we close, may I ask whether Professor Camila Sanga has anything to say, if he's still on?
Yes, Oni, thank you. We have enjoyed the presentation, and even those who are really not expert in the field, now we will also read the guideline and then contribute towards it. On the side of SUA, Sokoine University of Agriculture, we thank you very much for the delay, that otherwise an apology for the late start of the presentation from SUA.
Thank you, Professor Sanga. Dr. Pacifica, any final thoughts? I'm sure we have Pacifica on the line. Without which, I think we shall promptly come to the end of this session. I once again want to thank pardon?
Bartolomeo says he would like to make a comment.
Bartolomeo, please have the last word. Bartolomeo, are you still there? Bartolomeo,
yes, I'm here. I'm here. The thing is, I had some problems with the connection, and I have to.
Yeah, that's okay. We heard from your colleague. Hello, Bartolomeo. Yes, I think Bartolomeo is still having problems. But,
can go ahead.
For a minute, please.
Okay. First of all, I have to share with all participants that today in Mozambique we are on holidays. Today marks the day that the Mozambique revolutionary armies begin the struggle with against the colonialist regime that leads us to the independence by 25 June 1975. So Mozambique, as you know, is one of the 3 countries in the region implementing the democide e-flows supported by Nairobi Convention. And the river in Komati is our democide. This river comes from South Africa, passes from Eswatini, and ends in Mozambique. As you know, many problems can be taken through the way to Ocean Indic. And for the regional efforts, in 1910, Nairobi Convention also provided a report on environmental profile of the Nkomati River Basin, published in Kenya by UN and the Nairobi Convention. So, this opportunity, we think that as a beneficiary country, these guidelines will be very relevant in this implementation of this project. With the title, project title is Environmental Force for Enhancing Biodiversity and Poultry Aviation in the Nkomati Delta, Mozambique, flows. Overall objective is the proposed overall objective of the project is to design an environmental force that will maintain and enhance biodiversity balance and the functioning of the estuarine and the delta ecosystems of Lower Nkomati in order to optimize the delivery of a number of key ecosystem services to a range of stakeholders and with a well-being of vulnerable users groups a priority. Location is in south of Mozambique, and the lead institution is University Edward Monjan, and there is a range of partners also that includes 4 municipalities along this river and its communities. And main outcomes are mainly 2 regarding the water and the land use policy, the governance and the management for the river in Nkomati Basin is south, and those baseline will be done as scenarios. At the end, one of the goals of the project is to propose a water use and management scenario that will be compatible with the objectives of maintaining a health, functioning, and productive ecosystems in the downstream of Nkomati. Thank you, Dixon. Those was my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Bartolomeo, for the input. We do hope that, well, first, let's thank you for being present during your Independence Day. Thank you for showing up and participating, and thank you for that input. And it will be great to know whether when you're dealing with the downstream of Nkomati, you can join. We can work together to see what the upstream situation is with the South Africa, which is also a contracting party. But that is a discussion we can have. We can have offline. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. For that input. And
thank you.
Dear colleagues, I think we must come to an end for this event, and I really sincerely do want to thank all those who have participated, starting from Sokoine University for providing us the framework around which these guidelines could be produced. Kate and team for being there and making sure that the science in the guidelines is robust and up to date. I also want to thank WIOSAP. As much as WIOSAP would want to say they're not dealing with the rivers and the rest, in our ecosystem-based management approach, we shall always come back to you and use that platform. It's a platform that brings scientists together, and I think it's a very useful platform. And thank you for being there. I also want to thank all the focal points that are online and all the participants that have played a role in the in the fruition or coming to fruition of the guidelines. Thank Kenya, the chair of the bureau, for being there when we need you. And I'll urge all the stakeholders, participants, please download the guidelines, share them to the best of your ability. And from the Nairobi Convention, I think there was a question about the regional utility. We shall try as best we can to make sure that the guidelines are widely shared. As earlier said, we shall try and make sure that the awareness and of the availability of the eFlow tool is raised, including initiating dialogue on policies that may be required to entrench the use of eFlows at the national level. With that, and your permission, may I bring this discussion to an end? And thank you very much, and please have a fantastic weekend. Thank you all, and bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Wonderful talk.
Bye.
Bye.